Yeah, Donna, we do see you, and it does light up yellow when you speak. So just take a look at your camera and make sure there's nothing covering it. Other than that, you might have lost connection. You might have to go out and go back in again. That's the fancy way of saying, turn it off and turn it on again. The best IT advice anyone can give.
Okay, well, at least you can have my name, I guess.
Can you hear me?
Video.
Okay. Shall we?
I hear John.
Well, okay. We're calling to order the Community Advisory Committee meeting of May 26th, 2021. And they've asked me to do a roll call in which I will probably slaughter your names. So we'll start out citizens at large. Andrew R. Is it Rediger? Paul Wiggins? Remember, say you'll always say what you want to do, even though we tell you, but if you're here or not. Carol Campbell. David Betzler.
Here.
Vacant, not here. Vacant, not here. Patty Benger.
Hi, Patty Benger here.
Sharon Brown, I see you over there.
Yeah, here.
Okay. Roy Rosenthal.
Here.
Myself, I'm here. Rick Hoover.
Here.
Maylee Foster.
I made it a few minutes late, but I made it.
We're just starting. You're good. Tanisa Sultana. Did I slaughter that name? Okay. Gordon Rick. Isn't that supposed to be Rick Gordon?
Gordon Rick, you got it correct.
Okay.
I'm here.
Two first names is always a bear. Sharon Roars.
Shelley Roars here.
Oh, you're right. It was Shelley. Okay. Donna Wood.
Here.
Bill Bowes.
Here. Here.
Ann Ash.
Here.
Thank you, Ann. Terry Hayes. Ed Dills. Jessica McMullen.
And I'm here.
And Jessica Bechtel. I added that. Okay. Yes, we have. Okay. The next item are the consent item. We have the agenda, the minutes. Under the agenda, if there's any modification, changes, or something you'd like to add, speak now. Hearing none, I need a motion to approve the agenda. All signify by saying aye.
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 Motion
Aye.
approved.
Do you
Do
need
we
someone
not need a second?
My apologies. We do need someone to make the motion to approve the consent items.
Thank you.
Okay,
Patty Benger,
can't
I'll
do
make
it.
that motion.
Sharon Brown, I will second to approve all three consent items.
All those in favor again signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Okay. Anybody have a chance to read the minutes from last time?
Nope, we approved all the consent, so we're on to public comments.
Pardon? We have done that, so we need a motion for the minutes. We don't?
No.
I didn't know that. Okay, so the public can email general comments or comments regarding the agenda in advance of the meeting to the administrator, Bechtel at ppacg.org. Have we received it? None have been received. Too late. What's that?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
This is Laura Cruz, Mobility Coordinator. There was some public comments that I would like to discuss. But I will discuss that when I do my presentation that came out of the CAC with our funding decision.
Okay, thank you.
TAC, sorry.
It's just, I always say cat and I know that's wrong. And the action items, excuse me, before that legislative session update, Jessica McMullen will, under Policy and Communications Manager, you're up.
Good afternoon, everyone. So as you know, it is that legislative session season. You will likely only get one more update on this in this style. We are hoping that the legislative session will end by June 12th. It's still in the air. So since our last meeting, the state's long bill, the budget bill, was passed. Already has been signed by the governor, and there's already small bills going through that are related to appropriations. So if you're tracking things very closely, you may have seen, here's transportation funding. We haven't taken a position on it. It was all part of this state bill funding. We did get the transportation funding bill, Senate Bill 260, Sustainability of the Transportation System. This is the one we've been telling you all session would be incoming. This bill is long. It's about 172 pages. And there's a lot of details to it. And there have already been quite a few amendments to it. When we first reviewed the bill, we requested two major amendments. We asked for an increase to the general fund contribution. And we asked for them to look at the aspect of a specific section, it was 28 and is now 29 after amendments, that made the project report go to the Air Quality Control Commission instead of CDOT. It's an interesting aspect. There's been a lot of discussion going on along that. We were able, in coordination with our lobbyist and our wonderful delegation, to get them to increase the general fund contribution. That has been done. John may be able to phrase this better than I, but the Air Quality and CDOT, well, Transportation Commission issue is still, my understanding is that it's being tossed around as it is actually reporting to the Transportation Commission and CDOT rather than air quality, but it's written in a way that makes it much stronger that it's air quality. John, is that what you've been understanding as well?
The issue is that ultimately the Air Quality Control Commission would have control over the region's long-range transportation plan. And given that we don't know what the greenhouse gas rulemaking will entail, it is possible that the greenhouse gas budgets are such that it will be difficult for us to hit those targets. And as such, as mitigation, it could require us to switch projects from projects we would like to implement to projects that would have to come off the list approved by the Air Quality Control Commission. Additionally, if we go into non-attainment and we are not following the rules, the Air Quality Control Commission could then also have control over our multimodal mitigations option fund, or MMOF. These are, hopefully the word usurpation is not too strong for anyone, but it is a usurpation of local control of project selection, and that is of concern. Given that we don't know what the greenhouse gas rules are, we might be overreacting. We might actually be underreacting. It could actually be far worse than we think, but we just don't know. So that's why we're making sure that everybody is engaged in the process, and you can judge for yourself where it is and how much faith you have that the final rulemaking that is overseen by the Air Quality Control Commission actually addresses these issues in a fair and meaningful way.
So John did just describe one of those two major issues. There have been several other bills, of course, that we have been monitoring and engaging on. We are supporting House Bill 21-1227. It's a Medicaid nursing facilities demonstration of need. The state ombudsman program believes that it will increase the number of Medicaid beds that we're able to have. Highly important issue for older adults is the access to nursing facilities. and opposing some bills. As John just mentioned, greenhouse gases have been a topic in many different ways. Senate Bill 21-200. The governor has currently said he will veto this bill if it passes. It does not align with the greenhouse gas emissions roadmap that the governor's office worked with volunteers over 2 years to create. So the PPACG Board of Directors is opposing that bill. House Bill 1286, Energy Performance for Buildings. On review of that bill, it looks like it would greatly increase the cost of business. And one of the PPACG legislative priorities is to help support the economic vitality of our region. And they have chosen to oppose the Senate Bill 238, the creating the Front Range Passenger Rail District. That bill does continue to go. There are a number of updates on previous bills, including the Veterans Hiring Bill, which we supported, House Bill 1065 from our wonderful Representative Terry Carver, had an amendment added that would have created some complications. That amendment has already been removed. So we did a interesting temporary move from support to amend, and now we're back to support because the issue has been resolved. And see, does anyone have any questions about any of those bills? Or if you went to the legislative tracking site, that's where all of our bills are always kept up to date. And you can always find out what PPACG's positions are and where the bill is at the moment.
Anybody have any questions?
What about the airport space force, United States Space Force? Oh, nice one. What about what is the position and what are we working with for the United States Space Force? Are we supporting?
So that specific bill we are monitoring rather than engaging on. It is relating to minor funding aspects with the National Guard and its interaction with Space Force. It's one of those bills that it was not a PPACG issue in its context.
Okay.
So obviously we do support our local military, but that bill was.
We're
just
going to
not
put
very
troops on the moon.
There you go.
Is John still available? John, are you still there? I have a question for you. John DeVoe from Woodland Park. Is there anything that is being planned for the replacement of gasoline taxes with the kind of rapid advance of electric cars?
So embedded within this Bill 260 is a number of fees. First of which is there is a 8-cent fee that is added to the gas and diesel taxes. So you'll see an increase there. But additionally, and hopefully I can name them all off the top of my head, but Jessica, if you have the bill in front of you, feel free to jump in. There is a fee on Uber and Lyft based on when they pick you up. So that will generate funding. There is an additional fee on Amazon for package delivery, a kind of a cost per package, but they've worked it in such a way that if a package gets redelivered, you're not charged again. And then there is also something on the car rental. So they've tried to actually, with this Senate Bill 260, diversify the funding base with some of these fees. Additionally, the fee on electric vehicles, currently, I believe it's $50 and $30 of that actually goes into the state transportation or highway user transportation fund that actually funds the roadway maintenance. That through this bill is going to be indexed and increased over, I believe, an 8-year period, another $96. So it will bring parity somewhat to what you would pay if you're in a gas powered vehicle, you will still pay more if you're driving your traditional gasoline propulsion engine vehicle, but that additional fee will bring some parity and increase that as well. So still heavily dependent on fossil fuels for the overall transportation budget, which, as you intimated, is not sustainable over time. But this helps with that. And hopefully over the long term, additional adjustments can be made to kind of get us away from that, because you're absolutely correct. The gasoline tax income will go down as we have more of an electronic fleet. Did answer your question, sir? And Jessica McMillan, did I skip anything that you want to add?
I thought I read something coming out of Denver. They want to give more incentive and less cost to electric vehicles. As fast as that industry seems to be expanding, I mean, we still got to plow the roads for them. We still have to pave the roads for them.
Exactly.
And that whole thing, at some point in time, they gotta do their fair share. I don't know if there's a lot of pressure from the electric industry for cars of trying to get some incentive to do it. All they gotta do is make them go 300 miles on a gallon, on a tank of electricity, and have enough places around all the gas stations will probably put in charging stations, because until that network is there, it's not going to happen.
Right. And again, I apologize if I'm going off script and making your meter longer than you want it to be. But I will say that part of SB 260 is of the, and again, I'm pulling the numbers out of my old brain, and I might not be as accurate as you'd like. I think of the $5.6 billion that's generated by the SB 260. Part of that comes from these new fees that we're talking about. Part of it comes from the stimulus package, and part of it comes from the general fund. Of that, about a third of it is going to electrification. So they will create, I believe, and again, Jessica, correct me if I'm wrong, 5 new enterprises with these funds. And one of those enterprises will help with the electrification of the bus fleet. One of these enterprises will work at the electrification infrastructure. So there will be more charging stations, let's articulate that, charging stations around the state. So that will also increase the ability when you're driving your electric vehicle. You don't have to have that range anxiety. You'll have more places to stop and charge. Another enterprise will deal with helping people purchase electric vehicles as well as have that personal infrastructure necessary to charge those vehicles. I think those are the 3 electrical based enterprises. There's another one I think that has to do with air quality conformity that is mostly in the Denver Boulder area. And I think the other enterprise, I can't really remember, but a large portion of the funding is going towards electrification.
I remember, I think it was last year, we had transportation from the Springs come in here and said when they did the study on the electric buses, the cost was higher than if they simply maintained the current fleet that they had. So, but that'll come down as technology changes. That'll come down.
Yes, sir, that's correct. As the technology changes, they become more attractive. Additionally, as the age of the fleet that the city of Colorado Springs currently owns, as it gets older and needs to be replaced. So over time, electrification makes more sense. And the good news on this is SB 260, if passed, does help provide more funding for electric buses and a fund source for MMT to tap to make that happen.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions for John?
Yeah, John, Dave Betzler here. Just a question on the enterprises themselves, the 5 that will be set up. Can you tell us a little bit about the the funding of those enterprises? I think I've read something to the effect that they are or will be sort of a independent, if you will, from oversight by citizens, and that their funding, they will have some authority to be able to increase their fees, if you will, to continue their operation.
Well, if we were playing, what's my line? I'm going to have to flip the cards and say you've stumped me. I don't have that committed to memory. But yes, you're correct in that of the different enterprises, some of the different fees that we've talked about that are collected specifically go to those enterprises, and that is their funding stream. And I also can confirm that yes, there will be commissioners to oversee those different enterprises, but the powers of those commissioners, that's where you've stumped me. I do not have that committed to memory. Like Jessica said, the bill started at 197 pages and has been amended, so now it's well over 200. And I quite frankly, that is one thing that I did not commit to memory. So unless Jessica, you can help out there, I'm afraid that's one we're going to have to get back to you on.
There's not. I can share the transportation funding proposal summary that was created, and I'll send that out to everybody after this meeting so that you can look at it. It talks about what those enterprises are, how much they're expected to collect. So we got that at the beginning of the bill. So obviously things may be tweaking as we go, but I'll send you what they sent us at the beginning of the discussion.
Anybody else have a question for John, whether you're remote or here in person? Okay, John, thank you again.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item is item. Okay, we got through the legislative. Did you have anything more on legislative? Okay, action items would be next. The first one is FY 21-24 tip amendment number 12, Catherine Wagner, Senior Transportation Planner. Catherine, you're on.
Well, Catherine is on vacation. She is touring wonderful Alaska with her husband. So for those of you that ever watch soap operas, you know, at the very beginning when they say, today the part of Catherine will be played by, John. So I'm going to do my best to get you through these amendments. These three action items that were normally would have been Catherine's. I think two of them you've seen before, so let's knock wood that you've had all your questions answered, and those two run pretty smoothly. One you haven't seen before, at least that's my understanding, I've been wrong before, is tip amendment number 12. And for those of you who are not familiar, the Transportation Improvement Program is basically a capital improvement list of the projects that the region will be doing with our federal funds, or are using non-federal funds, but are regionally significant and therefore federally required to be incorporated within the Transportation Improvement Program. So it's a federal requirement for those of you who are relatively new, but that's what the tip is. It becomes necessary, and it seems like on a monthly basis, since we're already up to Amendment 12, that we do need to amend it to make sure that it is accurate. And the reason is because it is the document by which the jurisdictions or the sponsors of the different projects can go to the feds and say, we're ready to obligate those funds and get the money for the project. For them to do that, it's required to be in the tip. So that's why these things are important. So amendment number 12 that you have in front of you in your packet, there are three items. One is just a scope change to a Mountain Metro Transit item. So we're not adding a project or changing the funds for the project. We are changing merely the scope. And I think the way it was worded before, it was ambiguous as to if it would include new construction of new bus stops for the Americans with Disability or ADA compliance. So this is just a text change that MMT is required to have so it can move forward on the construction of some bus stops. The other two projects came out of a state funding process for transit. Through that process, MMT Colorado Springs was awarded faster dollars for 10 small bus replacements to the tune of $875,000. And the last one was a new project in VITA, which is a local agency, was awarded $67,340 for vehicle replacement. And those funds come from state SB 228 dollars. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but hopefully you don't have any because I don't know as much as Catherine does, but I will work through it. I will get you an answer. Any questions?
Patty Venger, I'm sorry to do this to you, John. I do
Fine.
have a couple of questions.
Sure, we'll work through it together.
And it may be more philosophical and process just because I'm not familiar with this kind of thing. So for the 10 small bus replacements, I assume that they're replacing them with newer models, that the capacity isn't changing. Is that correct?
That I don't know specifically, but we can get to CDAT, the Division of Transport. It would be attachment number 1. Do you have that, Jess? But yeah, normally if they're saying they're replacing the vehicles, that means they're retiring older ones, and usually it would be a 1-for-1 sort of thing, but I don't know that for a fact.
Okay. And I guess my other question is, since we are, since this amendment is helping to fund new vehicles, who gets to keep the old ones? And if they're sold, who gets those proceeds?
So if something is purchased with federal dollars, you have to keep it through its functional life. And in the case of buses, it's usually 20 years. Again, I'm not a federal bean counter, so don't throw all your money on the Final Jeopardy question that's correct. But I'm pretty sure that's the way it works. And so once something's reached its functional life, it is up to that organization to then dispose of those assets. Because they were paid for with federal dollars, usually they're sold at some sort of auction, and there's like actually some companies that do that sort of thing where they get it, then they get it, and they do the auction, and then they provide the money back to the jurisdiction. But not to bore people with my stories, back in Arizona, we actually sold a 8-person passenger van through eBay, I think, or Craigslist. So you just have to dispose of it in a way that makes sense. So that's the actual disposal will be up to MMT, and they have to make sure that ultimately they're following the necessary federal regulations. But more often than not, they're disposed of using a public process. Is anyone from MMT on that could answer, by the way? Nope, I guess not. So Patty, we could certainly contact MMT and then send you an email if you'd like.
It's just a matter of curiosity, and I'm still learning some of these things as they come through. So if you don't mind following up offline later, just for my own personal knowledge.
Yeah, no problem. We will contact MMT and ask them to send us an email, and then we'll forward it on to you.
Sounds great.
From there. Okay.
Thank you.
So hopefully we can still move forward with the amendment. That isn't something that makes you want to vote no. So.
Thank you. Are we ready for the vote on this action item?
Make some motion.
Okay, do we have a motion to either approve or deny? this
Roy
one?
Rosenthal, I'll move to accept the TIP amendment.
Okay,
Second.
we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving this signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Next one. We need, if you would put that on the screen so I can figure out what the next one is. Okay, item B, PPACG MMT Transit Safety Target Setting. John, I have a feeling you're going to talk again.
And I am going to talk again, and I apologize for that. But I try to be somewhat lively, at least. So, All right. So on the, I'm trying to call up my notes because, again, Catherine was the one that was sort of doing all of these, but all right, well, I can't seem to, I keep clicking the button, getting the same thing over and over again. So I'm going to go through my memory. So this item is the transit safety targets. And again, you've seen this last month with Catherine. For information, it's coming back to you now for action. Just to refresh your memory, federal requirements for performance measures require that the transit agency, in this case with Mountain Metro Transit, put together a safety targets of the different things that they want to try to achieve. That is then shared with the MPO, and the MPO then has the option of joining with the transit agency or doing something different. We've chose to work with the transit agency and have one coordinated performance measure, a set of performance measures for the region. They have to be approved at least every 4 years, but you could do it more often if you'd like. But I think we're shooting for that less stringent timeline. So at this point, and then Jess, if you want to sort of scroll down to what those actually are, we are looking for approval of those targets that we would then send on to FHWA as the safety performance targets for the region. Is there any questions?
Any question on this one? It's brought back to us. We had it once before, correct? If not,
Yeah.
Look for the same motion.
Patty Bencher, I recommend adoption of the MMT safety targets for inclusion in the LRTP and TIP, and to make updates to the targets as part of the LTRP system performance report. Updates every 4 years along with the other FHWA required performance measure targets. Whew.
This
I'll
is Shelley
second.
Roars, I second.
Sally, are you seconding it? Okay.
Shelley, sorry, yes, sir, Shelley.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those signify, all those that want to vote yes, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. The next item, I think John's still up there.
All right. I was thinking maybe trying to do this item with like a pirate thing, but I'm just going to do it straight. So
John, let me read it first so we get it in the
Oh, sure.
record. FFY 2022-2023 UPWP adoption. There we go.
all right, thank you. And again, this is an item you've seen before. Catherine brought it to you last month as the information, and this month it's for action. But just to refresh your memory, the Unified Work Program basically is the document that PPACG puts together with our federal funding partners, Federal Highway Administration and Federal Transit Administration, that says, they say, these are the planning dollars we're giving you. And PPACG says, these are the activities that we are doing with those funds. So that's basically in a nutshell what the UPWP is. This particular document, Catherine has done a great job of updating it. And if you see in your memo, she sort of summarized what some of the different changes are. We've added some public outreach and involvement language. We've moved the accomplishments. Before they were sort of broken up into the different sections of the document, and she's now moved them all into section 2. She's combined the expenditure tables, so it's a little more intuitive for you to be able to track the funding, and she's reorganized all of the different work elements. So with that, there's a few more of the changes on the next page, but in the interest of time, because again, you have seen this before, I'll just sort of skip to again, at this point, the TAC has reviewed the item and has recommended approval. Hopefully you will have a like motion today so it can go to the board of directors at their next meeting to be approved for the fiscal years 2022 to 2023. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Anybody like to ask a question of John on this item? Okay, if not, we'll be looking for a motion.
This is Miley. I'll go ahead and make that motion. The motion to recommend that the PPACG Board of Directors adopt the FFY 2022 to 2023 UPWP.
Thank you.
Do you have a
This is
second?
Gordon Rick, and I second the motion.
I have a second by Gordon. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. None heard, motion carried. Next item, John, I think you're off the hook on this one,
Yep, thanks,
unless they
everybody.
all left and you're covering for them.
Yep.
Okay, FTA 5310 funding recommendation, Laura Cruz, mobility coordinator.
Hi. I am Laura Cruz, Mobility Coordinator for PPACG. Many of you guys have seen me in Zoom over the past several months. But I have actually two things to bring before you today. The first thing that I'm bringing before you is actually a funding recommendations for our 5310 project. So for those of you who may be new, we became the designated recipient of FTA 5310 funds for enhanced mobility of seniors and persons with disabilities. And so what that means is basically we, as an organization now, facilitate the specialized transportation funding through the AAA, as well as the specialized transportation funding available for our urbanized area through FTA. And this is our first year implementing the program. We've actually been working with 3 providers who were contractors of MMT in the past to help us through the first 6 months of transition. So we have been contracting with them through an emergency provision over the past 6 months. And now we've been able to go through a notice of funding availability and a 4 applicants have applied for funding once that was launched. And so the 4 applicants that have applied for funding are Invita, Silver Key, Fountain Valley Senior Center, and Community Intersections. And we formulated a review committee of RAC members, as well as a member from CDOT who deals with these programs a lot to help us evaluate those proposals. And so through that evaluation process, we had a score sheet that looked at different things, looked at different criteria in terms of need, financial management capabilities, service measures, how it aligns with our coordinated transit plan, which is a requirement of 5310. And so those criteria that are listed here were the things that were taken into account as the review committee was looking at each proposal. Out of that process, we did recognize a couple of things within the proposals. One agency, and you'll see here, Community Intersections, does not have any funding tied to the funding recommendation. It being a new program, it's been a bumpy road, I will say, in implementing. And so we've learned a lot. And a few things that we learned through the review process and getting more guidance from FTA is more guidance on the openness and the definition of public transportation and how people have to be able to access public transportation in through FTA dollars. And so in reviewing Community Intersections proposal, their proposal was set around a very small subset group through sort of a workforce program that they provide transportation. So it wasn't something that I could call up and book a ride. At least that was what was presented to us. So in getting guidance from FTA on evaluating that, as well as looking at just their overall scores in areas of mission alignment, coordinated services. So amongst the four, three of them actually operate on the same platform, service platform, so that they can actually book rides for each other. And so those agencies scored higher on that coordinating scale. Also REACH, it was mentioned in their proposal that they serve 36 individuals through this workforce program with transportation. And again, that kind of shows a smaller reach. So in doing that assessment, the committee recommended not funding that program this year because it didn't align with the public transportation definition, as well as scored low in some of the criteria. Other than they did score high in terms of financial management, which is a huge thing with federal grants. And so I think that throughout that process, it was a hard decision, but in order for us to stay in compliance, we couldn't fund that agency this year. So that's the recommendation with that agency. The other three agencies, Silver Key, Envita, and Fountain Valley, both Envita and Silver Key scored high, and they were pretty much aligned in their scores. We also looked at the fact that both of those agencies, in the coordinating piece with the three agencies, they utilized a system called Route Match. And those two agencies had a lot of inputs within that system of making for sure it runs. Envita has kind of taken on the role of being sort of the technical assistance for the three agencies. And in looking at that and their financial management capabilities, those scored the highest, and the review committee decided to recommend that their asks be funded fully, as well as making for sure that we still were able to continue to work with Fountain Valley. Fountain Valley had some lower scores in the financial management piece, as well as slightly lower scores in the coordination piece. And so the recommendation is to fully fund Envita and Silver Key's ask, as well as utilizing the leftover funds to partially fund Fountain Valley's ask. So in the memo, it kind of talks through the numbers of that. It's about $30,000 less than what Fountain Valley originally asked for. We had $958,000 worth of asks to us through this RFP process, and we have $816,000 to allocate for this funding. So had to make some decisions on that. So we brought these recommendations to the TAC. We're bringing them to you guys. I do have to make one note. We have had an appeal by Community Intersections that was submitted to us yesterday. That appeal was sent to Jody Barker, our AAA director, and he and I are both assessing that appeal, and we'll have communications with that agency. Our goal is to figure out how we can continue to fund programs, even if they may not meet the funding source. How can we fund programs if they don't meet that funding source that are vital to our community? And so those are just opportunities for us in the future. So the proposed motion is to recommend approval of these recommendations from our review committee and from the TAC for you guys to pass it on to the board.
Question.
I have a question. Have you talked to Jolene about this?
Yes.
Okay, so she's fully aware.
Yes. And that's a great question. Thank you, Sharon. Just to also, I meant to say this, and I said this in the beginning, we did have some public comments at the TAC committee meeting, and both Jolene and Jason DeBueno from Silver Key supported the motion. There is a request of PPACG to look at the possibilities of them being able to subcontract with each other in case there is crazy things like catalytic converters stolen and things like that.
It's been a real
That things
problem.
happen and
Oh.
maybe some funding shortages. That's something that we have to look within the FTA regs, whether that's a possibility for us to be able to allow that. But I think all of them knew that the committee did their best to score these in a competitive nature, which is a little bit different than what they've dealt with in the past. We have to do that with FTA grant dollars.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Just a question on the community intersections. I've not heard of that before. Is that geographic area specific? Is it a regional thing? Is it, can you give us a little bit of background on that?
Yeah. So, and to be honest, this is an organization that I'm a little less familiar with. I was working with them through the RFP process and gaining some more knowledge about them. They are kind of centralized here in the city with their programming. It is a larger organization, I think, based in California. But there is a program hub here in Colorado Springs, and they mostly work with the developmentally disabled individuals and help them out with workforce programs and those types of things. So the challenge that we've been brought with the 5310 funding is we can't utilize the funds to fund a program that is a closed program. So the FTA funding is set aside for public transportation. So accessibility is huge. Yeah. And so while what community intersections taking those 36 individuals to Fort Carson for a workforce program is amazing, it doesn't fit the criteria of this. So, yeah.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I have a question. This is Carol Campbell. I have a question relative to if we are to make a motion, does it need to be contingent on that appeal, or is that just a separate question?
That is a great question, and maybe John can kind of help me out with this. To my knowledge, it does not have to be contingent upon that appeal. So that appeal process will, we have 10 days to respond. And so we will respond to that appeal, but ultimately it's our decision.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it.
Hi, this is Shelley. Your decision with regards to the intersections group, you said that there is, it's a closed group, so they don't accept just anyone into their group, and that's what disqualifies them for this money?
Great question, Shelley. No, not exactly. Okay. So their programs are open to individuals to be enrolled in their programs. However, what's considered a closed and open type of transportation, the best case scenario that I can kind of give an example of is FTA wants us to fund projects that ultimately the general public can access. So say, for instance, they call in the past the one ride number of MMT. We have to, as now a transportation transit dollar provider, we have to be able to refer people should they need a ride to, the grocery store. It has to be something that we can actually refer people out to and people can access to do everyday things, because 5310 is a supplement to paratransit dollars. It's going beyond what paratransit services it can provide. And so paratransit services is open to the general public within the different ADA provisions that they're able to provide through paratransit. So specialized transit dollars are kind of an extension of that to be able to provide door-through-door services. So ultimately, if it's a program that's for specific programming, like a workforce program, then that's not really something that's open for somebody to call in and say, hey, I need a ride. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay.
Anybody else? Question, John DeVoe. When you take that total amount of money, $800,000 or $900,000,
Mhm.
how many people does that serve?
Oh, that's a great question. I'll have to get that to you because I'll have to pull that from their applications. But I know that right now, let's see. Let me send that out to you guys because that is a great question. I should have done that. But the extent of it, actually, I may have it here. Let's see. All right. So looking at, let's see. We are 31,000 rides.
So that average is about
It's around
$30 a ride.
$30 a ride. Yes.
Okay. In the case of the one that is appealing,
Mhm.
that 36,000 for one event, I mean, 36, how much, 36 people, how much money did that cost?
For 36 people, and they were using this is the other part of their grant. They were using this as a supplement of funding for rides that typically get paid for through other programs like Medicaid and that kind of thing.
Gotcha.
So their cost per ride was really low. It was $7.84
Okay.
with those offsets. So it was equal to 13,839 rides for those 36 people throughout the week. I mean, throughout the year.
If somebody needs a ride to the doctor or something like that, of those 4 agencies or so, they can call any of them?
Yeah, and well, not community intersections from what we understand. And we actually had one of the committee members called community intersections to figure out how, to access a ride. And they were not successful. There has been some changes. I will say this, and I've been working with community intersections a little bit more over the past few months. They were connected with MMT's One Ride Center. So there was some mechanism in the past to be able to refer people to community intersections for some rides. Now they were the smallest contractor of MMT. And so since MMT's One Ride has dissolved, that program has dissolved. Since then, Envita has taken on the One Ride number. The group has rebranded it as Mobility on Demand. And community intersections has not fallen into that fold of those other 3 since then. And so there's been a lot of kind of pushing on my part as well, just trying to figure out how to reconnect people once we've had this big transition between MMT managing the program and now us. So does that answer your question?
Do you have numbers for show up time? How long it takes to respond? Somebody calls up and they need a ride?
If they call the Mobility on Demand number, they are getting a person.
How long before the people get there? Do you keep those statistics?
I can get those statistics for you.
I just was curious.
Yeah, and it's different per agency too. I will say that, certain agencies like Silver Key and Vita and Fountain Valley, they each have their own capacity. But I will say this, what has been amazing is of those agencies, they're not dropping rides because they're able to coordinate with each other. In the past, there was this ride drop of, hey, we had to deny a ride because they weren't connected with each other. Now that's not happening. And so they're able to, if Silver Key can't take that ride, Envita will take it for them. That kind of coordination. And also they're trying to continue to close the timing of when somebody has to book a ride and then get it. So, typically a lot of paratransit services, it's 2 weeks, you need to book your ride out. They're trying to get that down to less than 48 hours.
Okay.
It's a big deal.
If, do you have people that try to abuse it and they call up all of them and see who shows up first? Or the system between each other stop that?
They're all connected. So
Okay.
that they'll
know that's
see,
gonna
yeah,
happen.
and
You
they're
just don't
actually, they're actually on the same call system now. So
Okay.
they've all gotten onto a system called Ring Central. So say for instance, you know, and this is very new, so it's still kind of working out the kinks. So say for instance, a call gets rolled to Silver Key because all the lines are booked at Invita. Somebody's going to get answered. And even if Silver Key answers that phone call, they can book that ride for Fountain Valley.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds like this has been growing pains and you're getting better.
It has been growing pains, and it has been growing pains for this whole group. Just in the past year, they connected themselves through the route match system, which allows them to book rides. Just in the past year, they connected themselves and took on the one ride number, knowing that they didn't have the capacity of the one ride call center that MMT had, that they had to build a network so that they could manage those calls. They also stepped it up to the plate and created a separate number for transportation assistance for vaccinations for the general population. Didn't have to be a senior, didn't have to be an individual with a disability. You called that number, you would get booked on a ride to a vaccination site. So that group has really done some amazing things this year to kind of move the needle and work together.
Excellent.
I think
Yeah.
the other thing from a senior perspective is that I know that Invita has volunteer drivers. So when we talk about the number of rides that are funded federally, if you will, you get an awful lot more of rides because of volunteer drivers in each geographic area.
Yes.
It really does make a difference. I think Silver Key does the same thing.
Silver Key does too.
And Fountain Valley as well.
Mhm.
So I mean, those are really positive things. Again, that's the citizens standing up and saying, okay, I can help out. Let's do this. It has a huge
Mhm.
impact on the community.
Yeah, I will say that their costs have gone up this year because of COVID restrictions. While just a week ago, CDOT lifted the COVID restrictions for transportation kind of overall broadly, HICPUC hasn't. And so HICPUC is like the Medicaid program for transportation. And so while we're still dealing with some of these lifts of regulations and not, in talking with the mobility coordinating committee yesterday, though, they each expressed sort of concern kind of rolling back some of these restrictions with the types of populations that they serve, because they don't want to be someone who contributes or an organization that contributes to anyone getting the coronavirus. And so they're cautiously looking at those rollbacks of those restrictions and seeing if they want to implement them or not. So yeah, their costs have gone up because they can't put 15 people on a bus. They can only put 5 people on a bus. So we've had to kind of look at that too, from their budget perspective.
Did you come to us once before and explain this?
I did not.
Somebody else did, because I remember it about the demographics of the most active people that you were like 17 to 24 or something.
That
like
was MMT. I
Okay.
think that was MMT that presented to you guys. I'm pretty sure that was, they did their survey of their clients and presented that, I think last month or the month before. Yeah.
It just seems amazing that many young people are riding it. The elderly people weren't as much.
Yes. Well, and there's opportunities to kind of work on that in the future. I think that having me as a mobility coordinator and you, I'm sort of an in-between our paratransit, our specialized transit, and our fixed route groups. You know, I'm kind of I sort of call myself a fair play island here, that let's just put out some ideas and see how we can work on them, because they are doing some pretty cool things in other cities that would be awesome to implement.
You've done a very nice job coming here
Well,
presenting
thank
this.
you.
Been honest in that. We hope you come back every so often and bring us
Okay.
up to date.
I'm usually on the call. So, and you can ask them, I'm always here.
Anybody else have any other questions, either remote or here?
Oh, you don't, no, go ahead. You're not.
Oh, I was just gonna say, very good.
Well, thank you.
presentation.
Thank you.
Very much
Okay.
appreciated.
I just wanted to, you said there's usually just a 48-hour.
Yes,
I mean,
what
that's
they're-
pretty good.
That's
That
what
is-
they're getting down to. That's what
that's-
their goal
I
is.
think that's amazing
Yeah.
to get it down to that.
Yeah, and Invita has actually increased their fixed route. They actually have a couple of fixed route buses that go out, I believe, to the Calhan area. Yeah, and they're working with Cripple Creek and working with Teller Senior Coalition to do, joint routes. So that, yes, yeah, somehow. I have put a bug in their ear. I'm like, do something in Park County. We'll figure it out. So yeah, I think that
The
it's
Teller
it's gonna
Senior
evolve.
Coalition has more vehicles, I think, than the city does.
Well, there's a lot of seniors to move around up there.
Exactly. Okay, if not, we'll look for a motion.
I move that we recommend approval to the board, make a motion to recommend approval to the board of the funding recommendations provided at TRS and TAC.
This is Carol. I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving this?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody against it?
Nay.
Motion carried. Thank you.
You're gonna hear from me again now.
That's good. I'm glad it's good. You're very informative and honest. What's that?
Who said nay?
The next one.
I believe we had one nay.
That was Shelley Roars.
Thank you very much, Shelley.
Okay, now, did you have that list of which ones we have there yet? Is this the last one?
Yes.
Okay, the subject is changes to the program management plan for the FTA 5310 program pending TAC approval. Okay, who's going to present this?
Me.
Okay,
So we have to put together this very comprehensive program management plan for the 5310 program. And it details how we're going to administer the funds, who we're going to work with, how we're going to manage our reporting, so on and so forth. It's a nice, I think, 60-page document. We have coronavirus funding, as most people do. We have coronavirus funding that has been passed along to us through the urbanized formula grants. And that's both CRISA funding. Don't ask me what that stands for. It's coronavirus response, something. It's coronavirus funding, as well as American Rescue Plan dollars that have been allocated to PPACG to distribute. And in order for us to kind of quickly get those dollars out, we are requesting a change to our program management plan to allow us to allocate those dollars directly to the already contracted subrecipients instead of having to go through an individual RFP process for every one of those funds. The reason why is these funds are designated to be lifelines to these agencies. And if it takes us 4 to 6 months to get through an RFP process for these emergency funds, that's going to be a little bit challenging when they need it. And so these agencies need it. We need it. We need to be able to distribute it. We're getting pressure from FTA to distribute it. So this just allows us, when there's emergency funds, to have the ability, we may not always utilize this ability, but have the ability to allocate those to already contracted providers. So that's an addition that we would like to make to the program management plan. The second addition is actually just a learning curve for us. We have pre-spending authority of FTA dollars, which what that means is basically we can spend money, we can spend FTA dollars without having a grant in place with FTA, because we get apportioned those funds. I don't have to apply for the apportionment. The apportionment comes to the Colorado Springs urbanized area. And so with a provision added into our program management plan, we can exercise our pre-spending authority. What this allows us to do is, I've learned, and this is where I said the learning curve is, it takes time for when you get your apportionment to actually getting a grant approved with FTA. And we can't really deal without services during that time span. So this allows us to pay for those services as long as we have contracts in place with those providers, pay for those services until we have the official grant in place with FTA. So adding that into our program management plan will let us exercise that easier in the future.
Where's the oversight?
The oversight of,
If you just give them the money, and how are you going to track this without going through the RFP process?
so that's great.
So they don't get ahead of you on, or a habit.
Great. That's a great question. So what we're able to do is actually write our contracts in a sense that we can roll, at least these two funds, we can roll these funds into our next contracts with the providers that are being recommended. And so the funding is actually for the same activities that they're getting funded through the regular funds. So it's going to be tracked the same. It's just supplementing the program, and it's actually allowing us to extend our dollars that we have set aside for this program longer down the road. So the oversight of it is the same. They are, let me give you a good example. DRCOG does a joint call for specialized transit projects. And so basically DRCOG does this joint call and says, okay, we have 5 different funding streams for specialized transportation. We'll allocate those funds based upon what you have asked for and what matches up with it best. We're asking to be able to do the same thing when we do have emergency funds, to be able to allocate those funds to those specific providers.
Okay.
Short break,
Anybody-
please.
Anybody have any questions?
This is Rick Hoover. What do you need for a quorum?
Keep for a quorum.
What's that?
Something's come up and I want to make sure I don't leave you short of a quorum if I have to leave.
We require 7 for a quorum. Rick, it'll be okay if you have to go.
Okay, thank you kindly.
I have a question regarding this. Is there a time limit or a dollar limit on how long you can use this temporary allocation, or whatever you want to call it, of, hey, I can go ahead and spend this money? Is there a time limit of how many months you can do this without authorization, or a dollar limit?
Are you talking about the pre-spending authority?
Yes.
Great question. There is not a written time limit. And the reason why is a couple of things. Those of you know that Congress doesn't always pass the budget on time. So they don't put time limits on those things because of reasons like that. You may be operating in a continuing resolution and your limitations within that time are are to the gods trying to figure out, when you're actually going to have an approved budget. So that's why there's not a time limit on it. However, as soon as we go through our RFP process, we're going to start our grant with FTA. So our grant, just in our experience over the past few months, we got our apportionment from FTA for this year, for this fiscal year at the end of February. So that's actually supposed to be approved in October. So if you can kind of understand, we didn't get it approved in October. So we got our apportionment in February. In February, we started our grant with FTA. We were able to write our grant with FTA. It took us about a month to do so. New funding came in, we had to kind of reassess. And actually everybody had to redo their applications because new funding came in. And so then we rewrote our grant. It was approved. It was approved in March. So it's about a 2 to 3 month span of when you get your apportionment, when you're able to get your grant in, and when you're able to actually get that grant approved. We're not going to wait ever to put a grant in the system. We do have to wait until we actually have money apportioned to us.
So typically what I've seen is there's a limit of either dollars or time of how much you could spend. If we were to recommend, say, a 12-month limit, you can temporarily go ahead and start this thing, but once you hit that 12-month mark, you got to have something approved or you got to stop spending it. How would that impact you?
So just to be clear, we are actually not spending dollars during that time. And that's a great question, Gordon. It just gives us the ability to reimburse our expenses once the money is available to us.
Okay.
So, and it's written into our contracts with providers that there may be a delay in payments to them if there's a delay within that system that gets us the money.
Okay.
Does
So
that
we're
make
not-
sense?
We're not spending money without authorization. We're
Correct.
just saying we will reimburse you once spending is approved.
Correct.
Okay. That answers my question. Thank you.
Anybody else? Does the contract you have with the providers state what their limit is?
Yes, it does have a like the numbers that we presented for the next recommendation of funding. It does have that limit on it.
Unless they ask for an increase and justify why and all that kind of stuff.
Well, we don't have any money to
Okay.
give them an increase. So
You get another grant or something like
yeah,
that.
yes. If we received another grant, then we would actually issue another contract for them.
Okay.
Because the good thing about the FTA grants and the emergency funds, we can kind of wrap that into one contract because it's the funds are coming from one source.
Okay.
But if, say, for instance, we get some CDOT funding like we did a few months ago, then we would have to have a separate contract for that.
Anybody else have any other questions for her? Okay.
Patty Benger, I do.
Okay.
And this may be within that document, so I apologize if I'm asking you to clarify that, but what is the risk of that grant not being approved? And if that does happen, how is that handled?
So the interesting nature of formula funds is the money is apportioned to the region. And so we're the only designated recipient, great, only designated recipient of 5310 funds. So if there's an issue with our grant with FTA, and we work side by side with FTA in writing these grants. We actually have a representative that sits down with me kind of virtually now, but sits down with me and goes through that grant with us each time. So if there's an issue with the grant, then it just gets bounced back to me, but we still have the pre-spending authority that once our grant is approved, we can still account for all those costs. It's a little interesting nature because you're not really applying for a grant. Your grant is really just your statement of work, if that makes more sense.
Yes, so it's not a competitive grant process that we're doing.
No, it is not. We are the only 5310 recipient in the Colorado Springs urbanized area, and there can only be, I believe, one. So,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Is the provider protected from you if all of a sudden, for some reason, the funds are cut off?
Well, and that's a risk. That is actually a risk with AAA funding. That is a risk with the FTA funding. That's a risk with anything that we do. And that is something that, you know, specifically when you're dealing with federal and state funds, you're always going to be operating in a weird space until your budget gets approved.
You have to trust each other.
Yeah.
Do. Okay.
Patty Benger, I recommend the PPACG Board of Directors approve the changes to the 5310 Program Management Plan.
Need a second?
Dave?
Dave Betzler seconds it. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. I think that's all of them, isn't it? Thank you. Member discussion. Anything you folks want to all talk about?
Gosh, I think I've talked more than I have ever before in this meeting. So I represent the city of Colorado Springs, and you may not be aware that July 31st is our 150th birthday, our sesquicentennial, I think is how you say that. And there's a couple of events I wanted to make sure everyone knew about because they're going to be great. On June 12th, there's a Beards, Bonnets, and Brews Festival. They'll have 30 different breweries, live music, and food trucks, games that were played in the 1800s, and historic actors. It'll be at Rockledge Ranch, and it's free admission.
But tickets are available. Sorry, this is Carol Patty. I'm on the committee. There are
great.
tickets available for beer tasting. We are limiting those to 4,000 tickets to keep the capacity down. And we fully intend to sell all those tickets before the event. I actually have the website right here because I brought posters. It is coloradosprings.gov/beards, bonnets, brews. So buy your tickets early and often.
How much are the tickets?
$22, and it gets you a commemorative mason jar that's got the logo on it, and then you get 10 pours, and they're like 4-ounce pours.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually not a bad deal at all.
You may get a lot of phone calls that day.
Right.
Yeah.
I live close enough I can walk home.
Right, exactly.
You could.
Right.
Thank you, Carol, for helping with that.
Yeah, thank you.
And feel free to chime in if you know about the Adventure Passport, because that was the next thing I wanted to let everybody know about. The Adventure Passport started this past weekend. It's a thing that they've designed for grades 2nd to 5th grade, another free item. All ages are welcome, but you go to 6 different sites and you get a passport there. When you're done, you can turn that in for a special prize. So it's just another way for younger people in our community to learn about the history of Colorado Springs.
Cool.
Excellent.
I didn't know about that, but I also would tell you that June is Pedal Our Past month. Normally the month of June is Bike to Work week, or is bike month with Bike to Work Day at the end of the month. Because of COVID last year, and again this year we've shifted, but this year we've shifted to where it integrates the 150th anniversary. So we've created 5 specific biking routes that will have signage pointing out areas of historic interest and significance and that sort of thing. And that is actually completely free. We're just encouraging people to run, to ride, follow us on social media, but that'll kick off on June 1.
You're not going to paint more streets, are you?
I don't think so.
Okay, just asking.
But you will see a lot more bikes than normal.
Okay, that's good. That's
Yeah.
good. Okay, any other member discussions remotely or here? Okay, at
This-
that point,
Go ahead, Ann.
I just want, I wasn't able to print out all the recent stuff that we've been looking at, and I couldn't read it on the screen for some reason. But I wanted to just say that Green Mountain Falls, we were very active with trying to prepare for the fire season. And in cooperation with some other towns up here, I think we are applying for some funds that recently became available through the state to, we don't know if we're going to get it, but to help prevent forest fires up here in the mountains. And that's being worked on and has been submitted. It was submitted May 19th, just in time. And we won't know for a while, unfortunately. I also wanted to mention just and thank her regionally that our wonderful town planner, Julia Simmons, has resigned her position in Green Mountain Falls, and we'll really miss her. She's been so helpful in our old, over 100-year-old town with strange terrain, trying to keep it running. And I also will have a question whether or not the PPACG has an environmental person hired to replace the young lady who resigned.
We do not yet have our environmental person. We are planning on hiring our military program manager first, and we're stuck waiting for a Department of Defense grant to come in. So once the DoD grant comes in, we can hire that person, and then we can start looking for our new environmental planner. We do actually currently have 2 open positions in other places. We're looking for a senior administrative assistant and a ombudsman, and both of those positions are currently open, and you can find information on them on the PPACG website. And the CAC opening is still available for applicants until 5 p.m. on Friday. So for folks who want to pass those 3 things along to anybody, 2 jobs and a CAC opportunity, we'd love to have you be sharing this into the community.
What's the CAC opportunity? What does that mean?
We have an at-large vacancy.
Oh, okay.
Because Aubrey had to step down. So we posted that out and sent it out, but I've got 3 applicants. I'm more than happy to see if we can get some more. So
She purposely said that one doesn't get paid. Okay,
yeah, I did. I'm sorry.
that's okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is Gordon Rick. Just a quick reminder to everybody, school's letting out. We're getting a lot of kids that are going to be out and about, and we just need to be safe when we're driving out there. Hate to see some little kid be injured or pass on due to traffic accidents. Thank you.
Items for the next CAC committee meeting? Anybody got some burning desire you want us to talk about next time? Okay. Do you have anything else? Seeing one, I would look for a motion to adjourn.
So move, Sharon Brown.
I'll second that.
Carol Campbell seconds it. And all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Thanks, folks. I think we had a good meeting.
Yep.
And we'll see you all in 30 days or so.
Yep, thereabouts.
See you all next month.
That worked out well. I thought that worked.